What is going on, everybody? And in this video, we are providing you a state of the market and stock picks for May 3rd, 2022. That sounds like something you're interested in. Consider subscribing, as I do provide daily and weekly updates to get you prepared for the day and week ahead. Now, getting straight into state of the market, as you can see, the market has not moved. The market is waiting on what is going to be a historical event tomorrow. And this is rate raises. The FOMC meeting goes on tomorrow. We'll get the report at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and Powell shortly after at 2:30 Eastern Standard Time to field questions. Now, what we are looking for here is to understand, looking back at our last meeting, we raised 25-point basis move, 25 points. And then now we are looking at possible 50. Now, since Powell has spoken last, which was last Thursday, we have essentially come down almost 10% since that move. On this, we're talking about the general index. Now, being said, the market is anticipating high rate hikes. Powell said 50 points is essentially on deck for tomorrow. And a lot of people are essentially predicting 75 points basis move and removal of bond purchasing. Now, the only reason bond purchasing is continuing to go on is because of the war in Russia. The Fed is trying to provide that backstop in case something goes haywire and people go rushing to the banks for their money. That backstop needs to be there, or our whole financial system can come crumbling down. Yes, it's not fancy by any means, nor is it well designed by any means. So that's just how it currently works. So that being said, going into tomorrow is going to be big. If we can hit and they essentially expected 50-point basis move, I think the market would be okay. If we continue to buy bonds, I think the market would be okay. I think that would actually be very bullish sentiments. Now, if we came in at 25-point basis move and continue to buy bonds, I think that would also be great. Now, if they come in removing bond buying and raising rate 75-point basis moves, as you can see, there's a lot of different situations that can occur tomorrow. We won't know what exactly it is. Going into our last meeting, we had a lot of skepticism on what was going to happen, and then we found out the bonds were continuing to be purchased, which sent the market skyrocketing from that point, because it helps growth, and growth is a primary driver of this new market that we are in, because we all heavily rely on technology. Now, being said, we had AMD earnings, they did extremely well. We had Airbnb earnings. They did very well. Some of the forward guidance isn't looking too hot, but and then we had Lyft too, I believe, which actually did very well. So things are looking good. So that part of what the Fed is talking about, the growth looking really good, that is there. So that essentially gives the Fed, or allows the Fed to take a higher basis point move going into tomorrow, and it's expected. Again, if it's something that's not expected, it could shatter the market. It could scare the market. If the Fed come in at 25-point basis move and continue to buy bonds, that won't be a good sign either. It's hard to understand how the market would take it. In my opinion, that would be good for growth, but in the opinion of the markets, that may not be. The market may not like that the fact that the Fed continues to buy and spend money. But you have to also understand that if this theory is correct, that the Fed is essentially giving Ukraine all this money, it is helping combat inflation. This is why we're seeing continuous amounts of massive amounts of billions of dollars being funneled into Ukraine, because there is a demand and a need for that. Now, again, theory, I'm not sure if that's true, but it is help fueling and drive down inflation in some aspects. Now, to see if it's true, again, the only way you're going to tell is with time. The only way you're going to be able to tell is with earnings. And right now, earnings are still good. Forward guidance is bad, but we've had bad forward guidance all throughout the pandemic, and all the companies still did extremely well. They have to adapt and overcome, or they get crushed. And you're seeing a lot of mid caps and small caps getting crushed because the high expectations, and then they can't hit those numbers when earnings come out. Or before it was just massively inflated. But those ones that do hold true, your Teslas, your Apples, they are continuing to push. They're continuing to proceed forward in this, even with all these conditions, current economic conditions that are going on. So being said, there's a lot that can happen tomorrow. But again, key level we are watching tomorrow is the 4132. Something I talked about. We had to get back above before close yesterday. Somehow we managed to pull it out, but we are essentially kissing this support line, which is not good, because if for some reason the market doesn't like it, this thing could flush extremely hard. And if we break this level on the daily, we're going to flush pretty hard down to 4K. From that point. If the Fed really wants to push it, we can flush even further than that. Like I said, there isn't much support down here. We've been bouncing off that 20 EMA on the daily. And then if you look at the 50 EMA, so let me pull these studies up here real quick. The 50 EMA on the monthly, excuse me, I was looking at the wrong thing here. So if you're looking at the 50 EMA, is actually way down here. I don't know why I have 200 there. That actually needs to be fixed. But again, being said, that's the weekly. That's also the weekly. So being said, you have the 200 weekly and the 50 EMA monthly. I haven't marked this out. That's what was confusing me. Sorry. But nonetheless, there is double support sitting right here at the 36, 16 mark. I don't see the market breaking that. The market typically will bounce off the 50, especially when you're talking about a monthly support. But as you can see here, again, you get the 4K mark, and then you can squeeze all the way down to essentially that 3,800 mark. Again, when you're talking major supports, the market doesn't typically hit them exactly per se. They'll come close and then they'll bounce and bounce out. But also being said, this is a very interesting spot that we are in. Again, we've been bouncing off this 20 EMA for quite a while over the past couple months, just because there's a lot going on with the Fed and trying to get an understanding of that. If for some reason things do turn out, I think we can get very explosive from that point. Again, we won't have another Fed meeting for a while. So in the market, rotations and cycles have been very different this year because of just the way we started out and all the different, we also got midterms too coming up as well. So this is kind of, normally a midterm year just kind of happens as well. So just be mindful of that. Ultimately, the thing is to understand, is to be able to survive what's going on through here. This is why you play light and be mindful, because big moves, it takes a little bit to catch one of these big moves, and you make big gains out of these. But it's also been just being patient and waiting. Like today, I think I took one trade all day. Towards the end of the day when we started pushing down, then I sold. But aside from that, this was all pure junk. All this movement here. You don't want to play this. If you are day trading, you want to stay away from these kind of moves. You want to wait until you get a clean shot, wait till you get an answer. Tomorrow is going to be big on either side. And then Friday will be a continuation of, or Thursday, Friday will be a continuation of whatever we get tomorrow. So just be mindful of that. So being said, again, big key level tomorrow. That 4132, if we can't hold this, again, we're going to be in some trouble, some hurting. And another thing to consider too, we could do okay. Earnings have been doing good and showing a lot of growth and everything. We could pop. You have to remember, we haven't tagged this 20 EMA in a while. and almost about a week here. As soon as we do tag this at the 43, it's currently sitting at the 43.11. It's going to get rejected hard there. We may hit that into tomorrow. We may continue just to chop for a bit and then finally break out. So just be mindful of that. I do expect movement more after tomorrow, whether it's the upside or the downside. Just be mindful of that. When you see this, a lot of this consolidation, market's waiting for answers. When it gets the answer, then we'll get a movement out of there, and that's what you wait and prepare for, not so much trying to take a trade each and every day, because more than likely you're just going to get chopped up. Now, Bitcoin, again, holding very, very well. I do like that it's been holding essentially this 30K mark, 37K mark really well. Again, it could drop down into the 32. And again, if we do get some kind of major sell-off, I think we can come tag that 32 again. I think at that point, the market's going to reverse, though, and we're going to bring it back up and then slowly start our ascent. Of course, you got to remember the summer months are very slow. And so summer months being slow, that you're not going to get a lot of movement either to the upside. Normally, we wait till the next cycle into the Q2 earnings before we start really getting some gas to the upside. And possibly, I think that's when we're going to start getting back to all-time highs. Is towards that back half of the year when we start kicking off Q2. Even this time here, we could get some answers that would help us push us up, determining on, again, how big the Fed is. But crypto is doing very well, in my opinion. Again, underlying payment system is being replaced everywhere you go. So that's always something to keep in mind. It's, the devil's in the details, and I think a lot of people miss that. People think crypto, they don't believe in crypto, and so it's going to die off. But ultimately, in my opinion, again, the underlying infrastructure is being built as we speak. And so I don't think you're finding a solid base here. And I think this is what's going to lead us. If Bitcoin's going to hit 100K this year, I think this will be the new base for that to happen. But as far as going in tomorrow, again, you want to look at your big stocks. Tesla, for me, like I talked in a weekly update, this is one I was going to be watching all week. It is sitting back above the 200 EMA on the daily, which is great to see. Actually, remove this study so you guys can see it a little bit better. This is why I remove them, so they're a little bit easier to see. So you got the 200 EMA. We've been sitting above this. I think, again, we get the market goes positive overall. Tesla's going to rip. That's just a given. You do have this trend line here, so you got to be mindful of that and watch out for this. But ultimately, I think you can get an easy pop back up to 1K if that does happen before end of week. So if we get a huge positive catalyst tomorrow, I think this thing is going to rip a lot and juice quickly. So that's why I do like Tesla going into it. Again, if it does sell, I don't see Tesla selling very much. I think we could possibly revisit around that 800. You might be able to lucky to, I think, catch a wick below 800. I think from that point, again, anything is possible. But in my mind, that's how I'm kind of reading the market, is that, this is just a minor setback. Again, Tesla didn't get to really have any kind of post-earnings rip. So it's just being prepared for that. And I think it's kind of building up here to get a wedge breakout and start ripping, in my opinion. Another thing I want to watch tomorrow, Shop is going to have earnings on Thursday morning. This one will be interesting to watch going into there. Right now, premiums are really juiced, and I know this isn't really a play for tomorrow, but so you definitely want to keep this on watch and where this stands going in earnings. I think it's actually going to do very well compared to Amazon, and if it does do well, I think this thing is going to juice and make a massive move up. I might, another reason I'm bringing this up, because the earnings is in the morning on Thursday, so I might actually, I might take a cheap call on this one in expectation that this thing is actually going to beat very well. Again, depending on how the general market is. If the market is selling off, it doesn't matter how well these companies are doing, they're going to sell off. Tesla is a good key indicator on that. Is as good as it did. The general market sentiment holds more weight, and it will pull it down from doing any kind of ripping. And then once we get answers, the market will reconsolidate and get its thoughts and ideas together about earnings, and then start ripping from that point. So that's what I'm looking at. The Shop is a big one. AMD is one to watch. They're having earnings right now. Again, because of everything that's going on, it crushed earnings. And this is what I just talked about. It's crushing earnings. And it's wicking. This is a sign that general market weight is what matters, not what the company is doing. That means this can come back down to 82. Something I want to watch, especially going into tomorrow. If the Fed does cause the market to sell off pretty heavy, watch for supports, watch for this thing to hold. And if it does hold, I think after full market digestion, this thing will turn around and start ripping pretty hard. And so all the companies, so it's good to keep track of all the companies that are actually doing really good on earnings. And then when the market does flip and turn over and start running, which I believe is going to be after the Fed at some point here, whether it's tomorrow or whether it's next Monday after full digestion of everything, I think this thing can really start getting some legs and we're running from that point. Now, another big thing to watch, I think for me, I want to kind of watch AMC, watch GME. I haven't really talked about these much, but if there's any kind of pump on these, I'm kind of looking to short these going into, depending what happens with the market. If the market does churn and start ripping, obviously I'm going to go something like Tesla. But if the market does decide to sell, these will be the first things that sell off in heavy. Because people aren't going to want to hold mem stocks when the market is going to crater. So being said, that these are two to particularly watch. A key level down here at essentially the 1467 mark. If we find that below that, I think that could sell off pretty heavy there. I don't want to give too many levels on these. Again, a lot of this, I don't want to give too many picks, I should say, because a lot of this really just depends on what's going on with the Fed tomorrow and Tesla. Either way, if the market really decides to sell, this one will be hit heavily. Google, again, if the market really decides to sell, if you find Google floating around this 2265 mark, if this thing breaks below this thing can flush really heavy. Google's already flushed pretty heavy on some levels that I didn't think would happen. But as you can see, it too is also creating a huge wedge here and just waiting. Everything is just waiting on the Fed. As soon as the Fed gives a word, that will give us direction. Again, if we break this down wedge, we're going to get a massive, probably a couple 100-point move to the downside on Google. So just be mindful of that going forward. So you're going to want to look at the ones that do bad. Facebook's another one. That one's pumped a lot lately. If the market does bad, I can see this actually gap filling here. So you want to watch that 200 mark. If Facebook does break 200 tomorrow, because of the Fed, we could possibly get a gap fill down to 180. So you're looking for 20 points right there on Facebook if that does happen. So just be mindful of that. That being said, make it this far. I appreciate you. Again, tomorrow we could get a lot of chop going straight into 2 o'clock. The market held all day and hardly even moved. Something you rarely see. Maybe we'll get some information early. The market might start moving, which it's done before, and then go from that point. But and realize that maybe something may be leaked. People think something leaked and start pumping, and then all of a sudden the report comes out, and that's not what people are expecting, and the market can flush. So you have to expect this thing can move big either direction. So be very vigilant of that and manage risk, or just wait. My best advice for you, whatever, if you're an investor or if you're a trader, whatever your case is, wait for digestion. Wait till Thursday, see if the market gaps up, gaps down, or goes flat. And from that point, you can make your decision. If the market gaps up or sits flat, I think it's a bullish sentiment. Obviously, if the market gaps down, well, you know where it stands, that any pump after that is essentially going to be met with some more downside selling. So nonetheless, again, I appreciate you. Go ahead, drop that like button. Until next time, I'll see you guys later.